This is a story about Sammy. His father sent him out to buy bread, but Sammy didn't feel like walking. He wished he could fly instead.
You know, atheists say that the reason they don't believe in God is because of the lack of evidence. You know, they don't see the evidence that leads to the existence of a God. So my question is what would it take for you, an atheist, to believe in God? You know, what type of evidence do you require to satisfy your needs for the evidence?
What would it take to get me to believe in God? Well, first we have to determine what we mean when we talk about the idea God. There's a pantheist idea of God, which is that everything is God. God is the universe, and that we're all part of God. And in order to get me to believe that, it would be much simpler than it would be to get me to believe the theistic idea of God. To believe in the pantheistic idea of God, also all I would have to do is convince me that existence itself is worthy of worship, which to me just makes no sense. So, but that's all it would take. It would be to produce an argument that it would convince me of that, and then I would be a pantheist, and I would believe in that idea of God. But I think you're talking about the theistic idea of God. I think you're talking about the idea of a benevolent, loving, omniscient, omnipresent, super being that's able to be in our minds and hear our prayers, that is all agency, causes everything to happen for our benefit, that this being is outside of time, inside of time, just you know, the general concept of what we think of when we think of God, that it's all-powerful and capable of creating from nothing, ex nihilo. So if that's the God that you're talking about, let's first examine what this God supposedly has done. Supposedly, this God has either in 6,000 years ago or 3.7 billion years ago, at one of those points, he caused everything to materialize from a void. He caused the billions of galaxies to form. He caused the billions of stars in each of those galaxies to form. He caused the multiple planets and asteroids and moons that circle many of those stars in those galaxies to form. He set apart one of those planets, circling one of those stars in one of those galaxies for his attention. He created on that planet all of the conditions necessary to sustain life. He then initiated life, either through abiogenesis or through Adam and Eve. He created all of the symbiotic environment necessary for that life and for the things that are necessary for that life. So that he created this perfect ecosystem, and did all of this for the express purpose of our use, and did this so that he could watch over us, examine our every move, and decide whether or not we were worthy of being rewarded in an afterlife. That's what you're asking me to believe. That's what you're asking me to believe exists. And that's what you're asking me, what it would take for me to believe that that is an actual thing, that thing that caused all of this exists. You're asking me to believe that. Now, I've addressed this question once before in a video in this series. On Veritas 48, asked a similar question as part of a series of questions. And at that point, I had a little bit of a different answer. But for now, I'm going to say that in order for me to be convinced that such a being exists, you would have to convince me that there's a reason to believe that. In order to get me to believe this, you would have to convince me that there's a reason for such a being, if it exists, to want to do all of those things. To want for our morality to become the central focus of its existence when we didn't even exist to begin with. And it simply makes no sense. That would be an emotional need, by the way, and there would have to be a reason for this thing to have those emotions. We're always told that it's loving and wrathful. Those are emotions. In order for humans to experience the emotions of love and wrath, we know that there need to be hormones in play, there need to be stimuli in play. None of those things would have existed for this entity that you're describing, that I've just described, but that religion describes. So I don't see any reason to believe it. I couldn't ever believe that. I could never believe that. And if you really, really think about it on those terms, I don't understand how you can believe that. I don't understand how anybody can believe that. It makes no sense. It doesn't gel. It falls apart. It's a non-possibility. It's not just unlikely. It's impossible. You're believing in the impossible. And what belief is the recognition within your own mind that something that you've heard seems to you to be true. Does it actually seem true to you that there's a being that exists outside of time and space that decided that it needed to create billions of galaxies, billions of stars, billions and billions and billions of planets, billions and billions and billions of asteroids and moons, and set in motion existence, materialism, which didn't exist, and then initiate life and create a symbiosis so that we could develop and be moral creatures? Why? Just why? Why? If you can't answer the why, then why are you believing it? There's no why. There's no excuse for any of it. And that's my answer. What would it take to convince me to believe in God? Convince me that there's a reason to believe that exists, that could exist. First I'd have to believe that it could exist before I would believe that it does exist. I don't believe that it could exist. Thank you.
This is a story about Sammy. His father sent him out to buy bread, but Sammy didn't feel
that's
like
it. So
walking.
what would it take for you
Wished he
to
could
believe
fly
in God?
instead. And